You can alter Wyrd, aka fate, and I'm going to show you how. How you doing, heathen? I'm Matt Sargent, and this is Iwa's Initiations. Thanks for joining us. If you want to honor the land, connect with your ancestors, and witness the gods, all while saving Midgard, you're in the right place. So make sure you hit that subscribe button, turn on the bell notification so you don't miss a future episode, and you're on your way. Today we're going to talk about Wyrd and Wyrd consciousness. Wyrd is something that we could go, could cover spans of episodes, and I have been throwing around the idea of doing a Wyrd Wednesday. So if you're into that, leave a comment, say weird or weird up. But Wyrd is the Anglo-Saxon term for Oorlog, the Old Norse Oorlog, and it is loosely translated as fate. However, it's a lot more than fate. One, it is something that is inherited. So your parents, your grandparents, your ancestors' Oorlog or Wyrd is passed on to you. But two, it's not linear like the Christian concept of fate. In other words, heathens, we control our fate. Every action and decision we make, even spoken word, alters our Wyrd. If you'll notice, there's a little bit of a difference between word and weird. Is that weird? But nonetheless, I digress. We're talking about Wyrd, and so that's kind of the basics of Wyrd, and we're going to be talking about how to develop your Wyrd consciousness or your awareness of Wyrd, which, as you delve deeper into, will allow you to take greater control of your own Wyrd. Of course, no discussion of Wyrd is complete without talking about the web of Wyrd, which is ultimately governed by the three Norns, Verdani, Wyrd, and Skuld, the weavers. And Wyrd is often described as being a thread, and therefore it is malleable, and you can, adjust its position in the warp or the weave. And the spinners, the fates, they weave a tapestry with this web of Wyrd. And so all living beings are connected by this Wyrd. And so we can talk about the Wyrd of a family. We can talk about the Wyrd of a tribe. We can talk about the Wyrd of a nation. We can talk about the Wyrd of a globe, so to speak. So basically, with the web of Wyrd, which is ultimately governed by the fates, all living beings are connected. But if you haven't offended the Norns and you are a strong, powerful heathen, you can alter your Wyrd and the Wyrd of others by paying attention and making good decisions. I should highlight that if you really want to alter Wyrd, it can be a little bit more than just making decisions. There are references in the lore of altering Wyrd via magical practices, and that's beyond the scope of today's episode, but it is possible, and maybe at some point, if there is interest, let me know if you're into that. Comment web of Wyrd or alter Wyrd, and maybe in a future episode we'll start getting into the basics of that. But really the basics is becoming Wyrd conscious, and the concept Wyrd consciousness is a concept that I first came across in Valerie Wright's works, or Voluspa, Saved as Wyrd Consciousness. I'll have a link to that in the show notes, as well as another work of hers, Fornthrifa, Ancient Healing Touch. And both of them talk about the importance of Wyrd consciousness to the would-be Seidhu, Seidh man, Seidh woman, Seidh Kona, practitioner of Seidh. And being in Wyrd consciousness is a state where you can basically see the web and maybe make slight alterations to it. So, as I was saying, Wyrd consciousness is the goal of any would-be Seidhu. And in my humble opinion, it should be the goal of any educated heathen. It's kind of an enlightened state where you can see the interconnectedness between all. Once you're Wyrd conscious, you're seeing these interconnections between all. And that sounds like a very lofty and big objective, to be able to see the interconnections between all living forces. That's Jedi-like, and Jedis take spend years training. So do Sethus. And one of the best ways to start learning and appreciating that interconnectedness is in the forest garden. If you're not familiar with the forest garden, check out last week's episode, Cultivating the 9 Noble Virtues in a Forest Garden, where we give an overview of the forest garden, which is basically an ecological way of producing food, fiber, fuel, and medicine. But it's a productive garden space that's modeled after ecological systems. So once you start planting one of these and playing with it and looking at companion plants, and you've got canopy trees, mid-canopy trees, shrubs, an herbaceous layer, etc., you start seeing how they all benefit each other in the garden and help benefit your family, your tribe, by producing food, fiber, fuel, and medicine. But you also see the interconnected nature between all those plants and how they aren't necessarily competitive, or they're competitive in a cooperative way that brings greater abundance to all. And once you kind of catch glimpses of that in the forest garden, that's kind of like your baby step. And then you can see how those same connections take place in nature, and you'll start seeing those webs of Wyrd amongst other people. At first you'll start seeing them amongst family members and tribe members, and then you'll start seeing how it's all interwoven. And once you start to see, that's when you can start to make adjustments. Okay, before I wrap up my final thoughts about Wyrd, visualizing Wyrd, seeing Wyrd, manipulating Wyrd, all that good stuff, I do have one plea to make. And that is to, if you like this video, definitely make sure you click the like button. Leave any comments, because I'd love to know what you all are thinking. I'm doing this to try and build a community with other heathens that want to save Midgard or make Midgard a better place for their descendants. The conversation with Wyrd. Just like a carpenter needs to be able to see wood before he can build a fine cabinet or any other thing that carpenter might be building. It's very hard to build when you can't see what you're working with, or an artist needs to, most artists need to see paint before they paint. Obviously there are very skilled blind carpenters or blind artists, but most need to be able to see the media before they work with it. So does the would-be Sethu need to be able to see Wyrd before they can manipulate Wyrd. And working in the forest garden and catching those small glimpses of the interconnected Wyrd and how they can be mutually beneficial or mutually harming, that's like the baby step to seeing the greater web of Wyrd. And once you see that, you can start manipulating it. You'll also start to see glimpses of Wyrd, which would be the Anglo-Saxon term for Old, or to very briefly summarize, divine energy. And kind of the same principle there. We'll delve into this in future episodes. But once you can see Old or Wyrd, then you can start manipulating that. That said, thanks for tuning in. I hope you liked this. Let me know what you're thinking, and we'll see you next week.